No matter how many people you have on staff at your church, there's only so much you can accomplish in a day, right? Your church exists to serve the community. So the mission of your church and its staff is to reach as many people as you can. That's why productivity is essential for churches, as most of your church's success lies in its ability to lean into and leverage resources for optimum performance. And thankfully, our friends at Belay know this well. Belay, an innovative staffing solution with over 10 years of experience serving churches, has successfully matched thousands of organizations with part-time virtual assistants, bookkeepers, and social media strategists. That's why they're offering our listeners a free download of their resource, Church Leaders: Essential Strategies to Unleash Productivity. Let Belay help your church live its mission in your community by helping you juggle less and accomplish more. Just go to Belay. That's BELAY solutions.com/Lifeway for your free download.
Lifeway Leadership Podcast Network.
You're listening to the Group Answers Podcast, a weekly show designed to resource, train, and encourage small group leaders. Each episode considers current trends and resources, as well as timeless truths and methods of discipleship. It's hosted by Brian Daniel and Chris Surratt. Now, enjoy the show.
Welcome back to the Group Answers Podcast. I'm Brian Daniel with Chris Surratt. Good to be with you today, everyone, including Chris. So, Chris.
It's good to be with you, Brian, on the Group Answers Podcast show.
Yes,
which
yes.
We've determined it's so big,
Yep.
It's so grand that the only way to really kind of wrap our minds around it is if we had show on the end.
Yeah, and when you hit syndication, there is reason to revisit some of your earlier conclusions as well.
I've heard our South American numbers are doing really well.
Yeah, well, I mean, why wouldn't they be? Think about it.
I know. They don't speak English, but it's probably better that way. And we don't interpret.
Well, there would be those out there that would question my ability to speak English as well. But we are excited today to have with us Michael Kelly, who was once a recurring guest, like others.
Way back before he got really busy.
On the revolving door. But Michael Kelly is the Senior Vice President of Lifeway Christian Resources, and under his leadership is basically all
everything.
Everything's a church ministry publishing team. So Michael, welcome back to the show.
Man, thank you guys. I felt as though I'd worn out my welcome there for a little while, but then you invited me back on, so I feel very
well. You
honored.
changed your contact information, you changed your cell phone and your email, so it was a little hard to get a hold of you.
I mean, it's an honor. I mean,
it's understandable.
Let's call it what it is. It's an honor to be on the show. I mean, we went through this with Brandon, we're just not sure how that's going to work out from this point forward.
This is true. We told Brandon was on for his last show a couple of shows ago, and he asked if he would be invited back, and I said we'll have to let him know. We'll have to let him know.
That's
so
right.
The fact, time will tell.
Time will tell.
But we would always invite Michael Kelly on the show.
Open. It's an open invitation. That's right.
Oh yeah. If you wanted to walk in, and we were interviewing, President Biden, I'd say, sit down, Michael.
So we are gathered today to talk about the broader term of discipleship. And Michael has been in and out of the discipleship conversation for many years throughout his ministry. So we thought it would be good just to begin at this level of discipleship, right, Chris? This broadest level.
Yeah. I think it's hard to define when you say discipleship. It means so many things to different people. How do you disciple people? What is discipleship ministry? So, Michael, I'd like to throw that out to you. What is discipleship, and why is it important that we keep it in front of us?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is one of those words that, depending on who you ask about it, you're going to get a slightly nuanced definition, right? And that's appropriate because discipleship, the practice of doing this is going to look somewhat different from place to place and from ministry to ministry and even person to person. I think, though, at the broadest and simplest sense, that the thing that all of those definitions have in common is discipleship is really just about following Jesus. And the practice of making disciples is really about helping other people follow Jesus. That's what we're trying to do, not just in an intellectual sense, so we're not just knowing about Jesus. Neither is it solely in a physical or an obedient sense. It's really about helping people and ourselves bring the entire self, the whole person, under the conscious lordship of Jesus, so that we walk with Him. That's really what all that stuff has in common, I think.
So the way you said it right there was pretty simple. And if you look at the Great Commission, Jesus made it very simple. He said, "Go and make disciples." But it feels like we take this simple commandment. Not that it's simple to follow through on. I mean, obviously creating disciples, but this idea of this is what we're supposed to do, and we make it complex at churches and church leaders. Why do we do that?
I think we do, and I think there's a number of reasons that we do. Some of them are okay and valid reasons. I think most of us are process-oriented people, and so when you have a broad direction like what Jesus gave to go and make disciples, there are many of us that see that broad direction. They think, okay, well, that's good. Let me start breaking this down into action points so that I actually know what to do. And that's fine so far as it goes. I think where it can become harmful, though, is when you spend more time on the constructing the process than you do on building the people. Maybe another way to think about it, I've been thinking about it a lot this way recently, is that you can really have, if you divided it into just two kind of pendulum swings, you can have an industrial approach to discipleship, or you can have an agricultural approach to discipleship. So in an industrial approach to discipleship, it's a lot like building a factory, and so you have all the raw materials and they go through step by step by step by step by step. And then when it comes out the other side, you have a finished product. It's very clean. It's very simple. It's very straightforward, and there's a clear measure of success at the end. You have a finished product. And we tend, I think, particularly in North America, to veer to that side of the pendulum. It seems, though, that biblically the pendulum swings more to the other side, where it's more agricultural. And in an agricultural sense, a farmer, there's certain things that a farmer has to do. Like, a farmer can't just obviously sit in his or her home and expect crops to grow. Like, you have to till the soil, you have to plant the seed, you have to take care of the weeds. Like, you have to do make sure that there's water. But all of the things that you're doing from an agricultural mindset is really just creating the conditions so that the conditions are right to take advantage of that which you really don't have any control over at all. Like, you ultimately don't have control over the sun or the temperature outside, that kind of thing. So you're more about creating conditions than you are about constructing an exact process. When you have more of an agricultural mindset, I think it frees you up a bit more to be focused on the people, sometimes at the expense of the process. And I think if you have to make that choice, am I going to pay more attention to the people or more attention to the process, then I think you want to err on the side of more attention to the people. Now, the agricultural mindset comes with its own set of advantages, but in a lot of ways, it's harder to do it that way because it's not as clean, it's not as simple. There's not this guarantee of results that comes out. So it's harder. It takes more time and more emotional investment. But I think that's a more sustainable way to go about things, whether we're talking about it in a church context or just as an individual trying to live in discipling relationships with other people.
So I would ask both of you this just after that. Michael, that was the first time I've heard you put it that way, but that was great. How do you, like, if you're a small group leader listening right now, what are you processing? Like, how does this apply to just the role of small group leader? What Michael just said. Chris, I would ask you the same thing.
Well, I think it takes some of the, I don't want to say pressure, because there's always going to be pressure as a group leader to help the people under your care grow. And I want that pressure. That's good pressure. I want my people to grow in discipleship and become more like Jesus. But I think it takes the complicated, I can't do this factor out of it, or at least diminishes it, because what Michael's talking about is we do tend to want to make these perfect boxes that create, A, B, C, D, E. And if we can't live up to that, then we give up or we don't even try. And this idea of it's more of just creating this environment. I mean, I'm thinking about, we just moved and got some acres, and we're going to become the next line of failed farmers after Brendan Hiltebeitel. But we just started a garden. We haven't done a garden before, and we are doing what Michael's talking about. We're creating the soil. We made sure we got the right soil. We're giving it water. We planted at the right time of the year. So we're trying to make sure that the environment is correct, but we can't control when it comes up. We can't control exactly how it comes up. So we spend time just kind of setting the environment and the scene for these plants to grow. And it's a lot of fun, actually, as we're watching them kind of sprout and come out and things are happening. But I couldn't tell you that, we planted potatoes a couple months ago. It took several weeks for this. I couldn't tell you when they were going to. It's the same thing with discipleship. And as we disciple the people in our care and our groups, all we can do is set the right environment, have, study the Bible, basically water, and then they are going to grow in their own time and their own pace. And that's okay.
Man, that's really good, Chris. The garden illustration, I think, is helpful because a lot of people have done that. And a lot of people know how there's a frustrating part of doing gardening too, right? It is enjoyable, as you said, but then there's that part of it where you've got the conditions right and you're just sitting here. You walk out every morning and you're like, are we going to see the tomatoes today? Are we going to see the right blueberries today? Nope, not today. And then you come back to it. Nope, not today. Sometimes it can feel like that when you're in a small group where you're just plugging away week after week after week after week. Just is this the week where we're going to have some kind of break? Is this the week where we're going to see some fruit? Nope, not this week, but we're going to keep doing the things that we're doing. We're going to keep doing it. And then all of a sudden it just happens. Yeah. In the right time. It just happens. I think the only other thing that I would add to that, Brian, to your direct question about if you're a small group leader, I think a very penetrating question to ask yourself as a small group leader is how well do I really know the people in my group? How well do I really know them? Do I know specific things that happened in their week this week? Am I actively praying for them? It's something that we say all the time, but in as much as content is important for what happens to create a culture in a small group, at least as important is the relational equity that a leader builds with the people. And if you want to have more of an agricultural mindset, the only way to do that is to deeply, deeply know and love the people that the Lord has entrusted to you. So how well do you really know these people? Yeah.
No, that's good. I'm wondering if I can carry the analogy out. The only problems that we're having with our garden right now is the neighbor's dogs.
Oh, see, there you go.
Because the dogs come and they like to pick through it and eat. So is that like sin that's coming in and Satan that's trying to destroy? Can we go that far, or is that maybe?
I feel like Jesus went that far when he was talking about seed, put on a pathway and a good soil. So I feel like you're in pretty safe territory if you want to take it that direction.
That's good. I don't know if I was going too far. Let me ask you this, Michael. We have a lot of churches that have started regathering, and we're seeing groups that are starting to regather a little bit, Sunday schools that are starting to come back to life. But what encouragement would you give to group leaders and church leaders about why they should be regathering with their groups and discipling the people in their care?
I think one of the main things that I would say is that by emphasizing the need to regather, you are in some ways re-educating people about what the nature of discipleship is. Let me put it another way. if you're a church leader listening to this and someone came to your church and they asked the question, who is responsible for discipleship in this congregation? What do you want the answer to be from any random church member that's in your congregation? It might be that there's somebody on the church staff that has the title of discipleship pastor. That's fine. That's a good thing. There needs to be that level of organization in it. But I think the ideal way for any church member to answer that question of who is responsible for discipleship in this congregation is like this: we are. Who's responsible for discipleship here among these people? We are. All of us, we are. We're responsible for it. We are discipling each other. That is what we do in the Church of Jesus Christ. It is all of our jobs. So back to the original question, how to encourage people to regather. I think one of the main reasons to regather is because this is a shared responsibility for the people of God. I was looking at this recently. Romans chapter 15. It kind of gets into the back part of Romans, and before Paul does all of his personal greetings to individual people and that kind of thing, that he says to the church of Rome that he is confident that they are full of goodness and they are able to instruct one another. Now, what's amazing about that, if we'll remember, is that Paul never actually visited the church at Rome. Like, he's writing this letter to people that he largely doesn't even know. He knows some of them, but certainly not all of them. And yet he is able to give this broad instruction to the congregation that you are able to instruct one another. This is not a letter. It's not a pastoral epistle. This is a letter to the congregation by way of, and by that means, Paul is saying to the entire congregation, disciple each other. Answer the question like this: who's responsible for discipleship? We are. We are in this congregation.
Oh, is that the answer? So that's going to wrap it up for. I'm sorry. No, I'm premature. So with that in mind, as you boil this down, and that seems like a good transition to talking about the first line of discipleship and where that is. So I think the next question for you, Michael, is in terms of first line of discipleship, and we're talking about the home, how does that play out in light of all that has been discussed to this point?
I think that's right, is that we ought to see our homes as the first opportunity that we have for discipleship. Particularly as parents, we ought to see it this way, that we have this chance to actually help our kids grow in the faith. Because we live in such a specialized society, I think for the longest time, we have had the luxury of, in some ways, outsourcing discipleship to the church. And that's an okay thing, but I think a much better and more ideal situation is where there is a cooperation between the church and the home, where discipleship is happening in both of these main environments, especially for kids. And when it's happening in both places, that means that just the spiritual conversation in general becomes normalized. It's just a very normal thing to talk about God, Jesus, prayer, the Bible. It becomes really, really normalized. So it ought to be that children, especially, that the only time that they don't hear about spiritual things is at church. We ought to have this as a regular discussion point inside of our home. Now, this is one of the things I think, interestingly, that maybe, possibly, by God's grace, might be one of the redemptive parts of COVID, is that during the COVID lockdown, for a lot of people, the only opportunity for kids to really be in the Bible was in the home. And I think there are probably a lot of families during COVID that for the very first time started reading the Bible and praying together. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, this can maintain even as the church reopens all of its age group ministries, that it's not just something that we look at as a temporary fix until the church really gets ramped up and going again, that parents actually see what can happen in the spiritual climate of their homes when they do take an active role. Even it's just as simple as 10 or 15 minutes a day of reading the Bible with their kids, and they resolve themselves that even as the world completely opens back up, this is going to be part of our ongoing rhythm inside of our homes.
I think you're right about the COVID kind of at least broadening the discussions it did for our family. I know, sitting on the couch, watching the message and then talking about it immediately afterward gave us an opportunity to have a gospel conversation that we didn't really have when we attended a service, and started a habit for us that has continued. But I think one of the hard parts for a lot of families is, what do we talk about? How do we get into the Bible? How do we start that conversation? And on that, I love that you just wrote a resource for families. It's called The Whole Story for the Whole Family, a year of Jesus-centered family devotions. Talk to us about that book and how it can be helpful for families as they start to think about how do we disciple our kids.
So it really is meant to answer that question. So I'm that guy too, that for a lot of years, having a devoted time of family devotion with our kids was something that I always meant to do. But I just couldn't get it started. And there's all kinds of reasons for that don't really matter. In the end, it was just deciding we're going to do this. So in writing the book, what I wanted to write was something that was basically a really easy on-ramp to do that. For the mom or the dad that knows that they can carve out 10 to 15 minutes a day to have some time in God's Word, a little bit of discussion, and then pray together, that this can be something that can actually help them do that. So the way the book is organized is really it's organized into a very achievable format. And the reason that I know it's achievable is because this is the format that our family actually adopted, which is we do family devotions 4 days out of the week. On Friday, we just go around the circle in our family and say one thing that we're thankful for and one specific prayer request, and then we pray for each other, and then we take Saturday and Sunday off. And for us, it has become a really sustainable kind of rhythm to it. So that's how the book is organized, is meant to be used like that. It's also organized chronologically through the storyline of Scripture. So you start at creation and work your way all the way through the end. And hopefully what's happening there is that kids and adults too, as you read through it, is you're not just seeing isolated Bible stories one from another, but you're actually starting to get the connection of the threads that run all the way through biblical history, but then also the thread of redemption and the thread of Jesus and the gospel that runs all the way through the Bible. So I hope it is that. I hope it's really helpful. I hope it's really achievable and an on-ramp that can help integrate this spiritual practice into the lives of a lot of families.
I would just affirm everything there. Not that anybody's looking for that, but my kids are older. So are Chris's, Michael. You guys are kind of in the middle of things. How old is everybody there?
So we've got three of them.
Yeah.
So I've got a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, and an 11-year-old.
Yeah. So you're getting ready to you're moving towards the closeout. But yeah,
yep, that's right. That's right.
But when Ashton and Skylar, when they were younger, we did something similar to that, and they get to choose who was going to host that night. And I think the key is with family devotions, it needs to be accessible and easily managed. And that's what you've done. And that's what you've done with this book, without it being rote or overly scholastic or teachy. I don't know. It's teachy might not even be a word, but I think everybody knows.
I think it is now. Yeah.
I think everyone knows what I'm talking about there, that it has to be something exactly what you said, that it's open, it's inviting, and really what a good family devotional is kind of establish parameters and gives you a little bit to go on. Yeah,
I think so. I mean, one of the things that it was actually the hardest part of writing this, guys, honestly, but we always found when we did this with our kids, especially when they were younger, that it was hard just to start immediately with the text, just open up the Bible and start. So every single one of the devotions starts with a game or a little object lesson or, something like that. Just by way of example, this morning, when we did this devotion, we're in the book of Exodus right now. And, the account is where, Moses says to the Lord, "Show me your glory." God says, "Well, I will put you in the cleft of the rock when I pass by, and you can see my backside, but I can't show you my glory." Well, the opening illustration for that was, instructing the parent, hey, say to the kids, we're all going to go outside and have a contest to see who can look directly into the sun for the longest period of time. And of course, as it says in the book, what you hope to happen is that for some kid says, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. We're not going to go blind. And then it just helps you say, that's exactly right. This is a fake game. We're not actually going to look at the sun, but that's a little bit like what Moses was asking the Lord to do, and the Lord in His grace provided a different way to be able to do it. So stuff like that helps engage and put people just get people into it.
Yeah, I have to ask though, do you have a good lawyer in case some family actually goes out and does it, and some kid turns up blind and they sue?
Man, I hope it is fairly explicit to say, do not let your children actually look directly into the sun.
But do you ever go to places and there'll be a sign saying don't do this, and you realize the reason that sign is there is somebody did that? Like don't
100%.
Don't eat the urine cakes out of the urinals.
Yes.
The only reason that sign is there is because somebody decided to eat a urinal cake out of the urinal.
That's right.
They exist.
Every policy has an idiotic source.
Yes.
That's right. That's exactly
so
right.
You heard it straight here. Don't tell your kids, or don't let them go out and stare at the sun. Well, that's the whole story for the whole family, a year of Jesus-centered family devotions. And you can get that anywhere that you buy books, although I'm sure Lifeway.com would be a great place to go and pick that up. But, yeah, I'm so glad that you wrote that, because I think resources, that's the intimidating part as a parent, is just, man, how do I start those conversations? And to have something like this, there's really no excuse to not have those conversations.
Man, I hope so. I do hope it's helpful. Brian said it too. It's, the end all be all is not having a family devotion. The end that you want to get to is a more organic conversation about spiritual things. Having a time set aside every day when you do open God's Word really is a springboard, I think, to help you normalize the more organic and chance opportunities that you have throughout the day. And again, it just normalizes the fact that we talk about spiritual things here. That's who we are. It's what we do.
That's author and leader, Senior Vice President of Lifeway Christian Resources. Maybe he gets tired of hearing that. Let's just say, Michael Kelly. Appreciate you being with us today, Michael. I know you're very busy and have a lot of things vying for your time, but this has been wonderful, and it's also been a good reminder of just all the times that you've been on the show. That's going to wrap. Oh, see, that's where Zoom would have been helpful.
Yep. So that's it. I'm just going to say thank you. That's it. That's all. Just thank you. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Stopped me cold.
Yeah, well,
I was going into the thing.
Well, the music's playing right now.
The credits.
It's playing you off the stage.
Yeah. The credits are rolling. But that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Group Answers podcast. Thank you for being with us. As always, we would love to hear back from you with comments and ratings. Those are always real helpful and do inform show content down the road. And it's always great to subscribe too. That way you don't have to wonder about whether to go looking for the show or not. It just shows up in your inbox. Look for ways to subscribe.
It shows up just like Brian does every Thursday on my front porch. I don't know why. He's just there.
You haven't figured out that it's for brisket by now?
He doesn't knock on the door. He just looks in the window.
You sure can't take a hint. Thank you guys for being with us. We'll see you next time.